Being a big fan of Hollywood films, I can undoubtedly say that Spielberg movies have taken me on numerous adventures throughout my life. One of the greatest points of Steven Spielberg's storytelling is that when he tells a story, he wants to make it much more than just a story. What I mean by this is that his movies aren't just stories for the big screen, but epic sagas that really touch the spectator's soul and heart. After all, he's been in the business for 50 years and still remains relevant up to this day. To me, watching one of his films almost seems like watching life through the eyes of a never-aging child, maybe even kind of like seeing a movie through the eyes of Peter Pan. There's something very young in the way that he portrays his movies, the sense of childlike discovery within the pictures that he paints on the big screen. When looking back at his filmography, we can undoubtedly tell the difference between his early works as opposed to his more contemporary movies. Spielberg's first films were made at a time when directors were the most important people in Hollywood, and his more recent films are more governed by the marketing industry. Even so, he has managed to remain one of the most, if not the most powerful filmmaker in the world, and it really says something about his talent and flexibility to adapt. No wonder that Forbes magazine places Spielberg's personal net worth at $3.7 billion. With that being said, this is the fourth video in a 5-part series focusing on Spielberg's career throughout the decades. Be sure to check out the previous videos on the subject if you want to learn more about him. As for this video, I'm going to focus on Steven Spielberg's career throughout the 2000s. The first movie that he directed during that decade was AI, Artificial Intelligence, which was supposed to be directed by Stanley Kubrick. Back in 1995, Kubrick had approached Spielberg with the AI script, with the possibility of Spielberg directing and Kubrick producing it. This movie was based on an expansion of a short story called Super Toys Last All Summer Long, which was developed between Kubrick and Brian Aldiss. It was a futuristic fairy tale about a robot that resembles and behaves as a child, and his efforts to become a real boy. Following Kubrick's death in 1999, Spielberg took the various drafts and notes left by Kubrick and his writers and composed a new screenplay based on an early 90-page story treatment. In association with the remainder of Kubrick's production unit, he directed AI, Artificial Intelligence. Spielberg was able to function in Kubrick's absence but said that he felt inhibited to honor him and followed Kubrick's visual schema with as much fidelity as he could. The reception of the film was pretty cold in America, but did do okay overseas. After this movie, Spielberg collaborated with Tom Cruise on the futuristic neo-noir Minority Report, based upon the science fiction story written by Philip K. Dick. The story is set in 2054, where police utilize a psychic technology to arrest and convict murderers before they commit their crime. The film combines elements of tech noir, thriller, detective story, thriller, and the science fiction genres, as well as a traditional chase film. After the main protagonist is accused of a crime he has not committed, he becomes a fugitive. Spielberg has characterized the story as 50% character and 50% very complicated storytelling with layers and layers of murder, mystery, and plot. The film's central theme is the question of free will versus determinism. What this movie does is explore whether free will can exist if the future is set and known in advance. Other themes are the role of preventative government, the role of media in a future state where technological advancements make its presence nearly boundless, and Spielberg's repeated theme of broken families that has been prevalent in many of his previous movies. In 2002, Spielberg released Catch Me If You Can, for which development had started in 1980 after the release of a book by the same name. DreamWorks bought the rights to the book in 1997. This movie is based on the real life of Frank Abagnale, who before his 19th birthday successfully performed cons worth millions of dollars by posing as a Pan-American World Airways pilot, a Georgia doctor, and a Louisiana prosecutor. The biggest crime that he used to perform was for check fraud. Frank was so skilled at this that the FBI eventually turned to him for advice on catching other check forgers. Catch Me If You Can deals with the themes of broken homes and childhood. As mentioned in previous videos about Spielberg, Steven's parents divorced when he was a teenager, and obviously impacted his future dramatically. This is why many of his films deal with this theme. For Spielberg, making this movie was also a way to create a film where the audience could sympathize with a crook. Frank was a 21st century genius working with the innocence of the mid-60s, when people were more trusting than they are now. In 2004, Spielberg made the movie The Terminal, which was again partly inspired by a true story where a man named Maram Karimi Nasseri was stuck in Terminal 1 of the Paris de Gaulle airport in France for 18 years. Due to the lack of suitable airports willing to provide the facilities for the production, an entire working set was built inside a large hangar at the LA Palmdale Regional Airport, while most of the exteriors were filmed at the Montreal Mirabel International Airport. The terminal tells the story of Viktor Navorsky, an Eastern European tourist that just arrived at the JFK Airport in New York. At that moment, war breaks out in his country and he finds himself caught up in international politics. Because of the war, the Department of Homeland Security won't let him enter or exit the United States. He's trapped at JFK indefinitely. While living at the airport, Victor falls for a flight attendant. Spielberg directed this movie because he wanted to make another film that could make its audience laugh and cry and feel good about the world. In 2005, Steven Spielberg directed a modern adaptation of War of the Worlds, based on the H.G. Wells book of the same name. This movie, unlike his previous movies E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which depicted friendly alien visitors, War of the Worlds featured violent invaders. This movie tells the story of dock worker Ray Ferrier, who is struggling to build a good relationship with his two children. During a weekend visit with his children, electromagnetic pulses of lightning strike the area. The strange event turns out to be the beginning of an alien invasion. Ray Ferrier does everything in his power to save his children and run away from the alien threat. This movie was made after having collaborated with Tom Cruise in 2002 with Minority Report. Since that initial collaboration, Spielberg and Cruise had been wanting to find another script to work on together. Spielberg stated about Cruise, "He's such an intelligent creative partner and brings such great ideas to the set that we just spark each other." Even though the movie's title has war in it, this movie is actually an anti-war film, as civilians run and only try to save themselves and their family instead of fighting back against the alien threat. Many critics compared the atmosphere of the film as reminiscent to the events that happened during the September 11 attacks, with bystanders struggling to survive and the usage of missing person displays. According to Spielberg, despite the work being fantasy, the threat represented was real. Also in 2005, Spielberg released another movie entitled Munich, about the events following the 1972 Munich massacre of Israeli athletes at the Olympic Games. This was his second film essaying Jewish relations in the world, the first one being Schindler's List. The film is based on a book by Canadian journalist George Jonas entitled Vengeance. After the murder of 11 Israeli athletes and their coach at the 1972 Olympics by the hands of a Palestinian terrorist group, Avner Kaufman and a Mossad agent of German Jewish descent are chosen to lead a mission to assassinate 11 Palestinians allegedly involved in the massacre. Although Munich is a work of fiction, it describes many actual events and figures from the early 1970s. Spielberg tried to make the depiction of the hostage-taking and killing of the Israeli athletes starkly authentic, unlike an earlier film called 21 Hours at Munich, which spoke about the same event. As for Munich, it depicts the shooting of all the Israeli athletes, which, according to autopsies, was accurate. In addition, the film uses actual news clip shots during the hostage situation. The film received strong critical praise, but underperformed at the US and world box office. In 2008, Spielberg released another sequel to the Indiana Jones saga entitled Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This movie wasn't made without any controversies. After the filming of Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Spielberg was pretty much done with the series. Lucas went on to create a prequel series made for TV focusing on Jones in his younger years. Harrison Ford played Indiana Jones in one episode of the TV series, narrating his adventures in 1920 Chicago. When Lucas shot Ford's role in December 1992, he realized the scene opened up the possibility of a film with an older Indiana set in the 1950s. Since early on in the development of the new Indiana Jones, Lucas was insisting on the idea of aliens. Spielberg said after the release of Independence Day in 1996 that he would never make another alien invasion movie, so Lucas focused on his Star Wars prequels. Years later, after his children constantly asking when he would make the next Indiana Jones movie and wanting to part from darker toned films such as AI, artificial intelligence, Minority Report, and Munich, Spielberg agreed to make another Jones sequel. Lucas was even able to convince Spielberg to add aliens in it after telling him that the extraterrestrial beings were not really extraterrestrials, but more so interdimensional beings. The whole concept of the movie was to make it as campy as possible, keeping in mind the central theme of B-movies of the 1950s involving aliens. This was his first film not to be released by DreamWorks since 1997. The film received positive reviews, even though I personally felt that it was a really bad movie and that it wasn't even close to the masterpiece of the previous sequels. I love Spielberg, but I felt that George Lucas was given too much control in this movie and it ruined it. There are talks to make another sequel, and I really hope that they manage to redeem themselves. Steven Spielberg is undoubtedly a genius and has created masterpieces throughout the decades. As filmmaking and art go, not all artistic endeavors will be exceptional, but sometimes as an artist we need to be able to explore different subjects and take risks even if they don't please the audience in the end. Well, this concludes the fourth part of the 5-part retrospective. Please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. As always, thank you for watching. Leave me a comment too if you want to tell me your favorite Spielberg moment or movie. I'd love to hear from you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.